Welcome to the Whiskey Congress. Honest, open talk dedicated to speaking the truth to those who are open to hearing it. Black, white, right, left. Most importantly, honest, bold, and fueled by good whiskey. In Whiskey Veritas, we are Whiskey Congress. Join the evolution.
Welcome back to Whiskey Congress. We have another whiskey to talk about. It is Redemption Rye, 92 proof rye whiskey. I should have looked at where it's from. It's Kentucky, I know. I don't know.
Well, the distillery is actually out of Indiana.
Oh, Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Look at that.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, rye. It's a rye, which is a bit, we've done several of them, but it's not our typical Scotch bourbon thing. I like it a lot. I mean, it's 92 proof and it's smooth as silk. I don't feel any burn at all. It's got a good flavor. It's a little bit on the
spicy side.
Yeah, and it's not like super complex. It's kind of, for lack of a better word, kind of a simple flavor, but it's really good and it's smooth as silk. I gave it a 90.
I'll give it a 90. I think you're right. The flavor isn't overly complex. I think it does have like spice to it. When I say spice, like allspice. Or
let me take another hit here.
Almost like a little peppery.
I was gonna say a little pepper or something
on the end. You don't get your normal, kind of cherry vanilla,
right,
sweeter notes out of it. But it is very smooth, and at 92 proof, it's got plenty of punch.
It meets the Steve seal of approval.
So 90 works, and I like it. I mean, and for the price point,
$26, and that was downtown.
Right. So I mean, it's one that is probably worth having on your shelf.
Absolutely.
And it's not going to blow you out of the water, but again, it's
a really solid whiskey for $25, $26 a bottle, and
bottle looks good.
The bottle's cool. Yeah, presentation's good.
So I mean, those are all good things when you're looking for whiskeys to put on your shelf. Something that doesn't break the bank.
I know I've paid a lot more for things I didn't like as much.
Oh yeah. How much was the Lusty Claw?
First of all, fuck you.
Okay.
I got it on sale at $55.
Oh God.
That was why that was so brutal. I was in that store. The bottle was cool. There were like only 2 bottles left, and I'm thinking I didn't realize that was their celebration that they were almost out of it. I thought it was because but yeah.
I don't know. Based off of that, I don't know if you would have made it out of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Go ahead. I'm missing the joke.
Well, because
the Last Crusade. Oh, I chose poorly.
You have
chosen poorly. Oh boy. Oh, man. All right. So we have been talking relatively little Trump lately, which I've been perfectly fine with.
Yeah.
But there's something that is not necessarily policy or him speaking like a buffoon. We got kind of a serious issue going on with he's trying to hurry up pardons for soldiers convicted of war crimes, including contractors convicted of war crimes.
Yes.
And so I've got pretty mixed feelings about this. Like, it is his right to do it. I don't dispute that. It's not, inappropriate from a legality standpoint, but it just feels bad.
You talk about things passing the smell test, right?
And this does not.
And it definitely does, especially the Blackwater contractors, knowing that, Betsy Davis's brother,
Eric Prince,
is had a big I mean, didn't he found Blackwater?
Yeah, he was the founder, and
so I mean, it just doesn't like that. Doesn't quite. Again, it just doesn't pass the smell test. I mean, it's listen. These are war crimes. The only one that's not. There were some soldiers that were convicted of peeing on some dead Afghan soldiers, but the rest of these are all.
People
soldiers
convicted of murder,
yeah, murdering people, that were unarmed, may or may we don't know if they were innocent or not, but they murdered unarmed people, whether it was through interrogation or just shot them in the field.
And these are convicted.
Most of them are convicted, I think.
Or some are charged.
Some are charged, and they're pending. Their court cases are pending. So it just. That bothers me, and the fact that he's trying to rush it through, so he can get it done by Memorial Day, and I just think it sets a I think it sets a bad example. It sets a bad tone. I think it hurts the military, because if we've got a number of troops deployed right now, and I think the idea that, listen, there's rules of engagement, there's rules, there's war rules that
Right.
we abide by, and we hold ourselves, we want to, and we try to, and we like to think that we hold ourselves to a higher standard. And if you have people or soldiers committing, this ultimate crime of killing unarmed people,
Right.
whether they're in interrogation or just, in the field, looking at the circumstances. But I mean, some of these, and there's an article in the New York Post that kind of goes through each of the circumstances of the various soldiers, and on the surface, and not having all the information, but it just doesn't seem like these are the sort of offenses that you would want to pardon. Now, there's an argument of the fog of war,
Sure.
and so, and having never been in that situation, you don't want to judge them too harshly, but at the same time, there's right and there's wrong.
And these people the ones who were convicted went through the legal process.
Right. And so, and the argument is, oh, well, they were, they got essentially railroaded. And, when you're talking about people being murdered, that's a hard argument. And so for him to be, for our president to be trying to rush these guys' pardons through,
Before a military-based holiday.
right.
It smells bad. It seems like a pandering move by a guy who has been pandering a lot,
Right,
especially in the military.
it's so, and he's such an oddball, because, this is the same guy who says he didn't like John McCain because John McCain was a loser and he got caught and
Right.
was a POW, and he says that he's smarter than all the generals, and he Mattis left because he didn't agree with him, so Trump dogs Mattis, and he should eat all these people, and he's he says all these ridiculous things, and then turns around and just says, oh, I love our military, and he's clearly pandering.
Yeah.
He's clearly, and it blows my mind that the people who just blindly support him no matter what, and listen, he's the president of the United States, and as a citizen, you should want the president to succeed. You should not want the president to fail, because it's bad for the greater good and it's bad for the country.
Cutting off your nose to spite your face, basically. Right.
Exactly. So, but at the same time, just looking at it, taking a step back, looking at it, big picture. If you're just talking about what he's doing, he's just clearly pandering to, the conservative MAGA supporters that have kind of grown outside of Trump to now. If Trump were to flip on something that they didn't like, they have their own cult-like mindset at this point, and he's clearly, that's what he's keyed into, right? Getting their support, getting them riled up. You got the 2020 election coming, and in his mind, he feels that he has this major influence on, the down ticket on the ballot. So, he's like, well, I'm gonna pardon, these war criminals, because, they're our troops and no one should be punishing our troops.
Right.
Essentially because they're in the military, there's
No law.
There's no repercussion for them, right? So he does that, and then he's gonna carry it into, basically that's how he's gonna open his campaign for 2020. That's what it feels like. And again, it just doesn't feel right. And then again, you have to wonder what this does to the mindset of the people that are out in the field, that are out in these places, whether it's Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, could be Iran sooner than later. What happens to their mindset if they see that people, their fellow soldiers who committed really the ultimate wrong, right, killing innocent, unarmed people, are getting pardoned, and you figure, oh, if Trump's going to be around for another, 5-6 years, then, then all of a sudden, do the lines get even more blurry than they already are? And then, do we have more unarmed people? Because you hate to call them innocent because you don't know the situation, but you have more, unarmed people that wouldn't necessarily fall into that, you can engage these people because check these boxes. And I don't know. And I don't feel, it just doesn't make me feel comfortable at all. Hopefully somebody can talk him out of it.
Well, and the idea that, is he possibly doing the right thing? I don't think so. I don't know. But to me, it's pretty plain and clear he's doing it for political reasons. Mm-hmm. And, people have been pardoned for being, doing favors for politicians and friends of politicians have been pardoned by presidents exiting the White House for a very long time.
Right.
But I agree with you. This just does not pass the sniff test. It feels like pandering.
And if you look at the people Trump has pardoned already, right? A lot of people, there's, in social media, especially, Twitter and Facebook, there's this growing sentiment that Trump has, pardoned all these, nonviolent drug offenders.
Right.
And he hasn't. Trump has only pardoned one.
Kim Kardashian's friend.
Yeah. The Alice Marie Johnson. That's the only, nonviolent drug offender that he has actually pardoned. Which, again, it's his power to use. But if you look at the people he has pardoned. He pardoned Dwight and Stephen Hammond. Remember those guys?
No.
Remember they held up in Oregon.
Oh yeah. I forget the town, but yeah, there were the ranchers who owed a bunch of back money and had a standoff with the feds that, fortunately and kind of surprisingly, didn't end up in a Ruby Ridge type shootout.
Yeah. And then you have Dinesh D'Souza, who he pled guilty. He pled guilty in 2014 to illegally using straw donors in 2012 to donate to a Republican Senate candidate in New York. He used the straw donors to funnel his funds to the candidate under their names to try and get around campaign finance laws. He also...
Well, that's not surprising that Trump would be sympathetic to that.
Right. And then he also... he pardoned Jack Johnson, which I think we talked about.
That's a good thing, yes.
He pardoned Scooter Libby.
I forgot about that. Scooter Libby, whose sentence had already been commuted, so he was no longer in prison. Mm-hmm. But yeah, now a pardon makes him an innocent man. I think.
And then a couple other people. The Navy sailor who took pictures of the classified sub and ended up getting sent to jail, Christian Saucier.
Okay.
And Joe Arpaio.
Joe Arpaio.
Yeah, Joe Arpaio.
The Arizona sheriff who basically created concentration camps for immigration detainees. Yeah, yes. Joe Arpaio is fucking gross. As a human being, he's just disgusting. Right. By the way, you know who he has not pardoned? Roger Stone, who is also back in the news.
Right, and it's early with Roger Stone. I think I think that's lingering out there.
Maybe, but here we go. I need you. So you deserve to have this.
I'm scrolling through the news, and I see this thing. I see this article that says that Roger Stone has been approved for, to leave the state of Florida for trips to strip clubs.
For business trips, Steve.
Well,
but those business trips.
But the headline just said, trips
right.
to strip, and I'm like, what? So you dig into it, and he's basically doing, hot body contests in a couple different states, and then he says he's going to, give a talk or a speech or whatever, and get paid for it because he's saying that he's broke and he needs the money.
And Chad Ochocinco, his neighbor Chad Ochocinco and he are unable to go to strip clubs in Florida anymore and throw the money around the way they used to. So I was buying you time. Sorry.
Oh, okay. But so I just think it's this is a guy that was a very close confidant of Donald Trump.
Right.
Right. I mean, this guy had influence over the president of the United States, and now he's doing wet T-shirt contests, celebrity porn star wet T-shirt contests to raise money for his criminal defense. I mean, what? Who? Like,
this is the world we live in.
And if you know anything about Roger Stone, like if you go back and you look at some of the charging documents, and things like that. I mean, this dude is wild.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's just no. I mean, flamboyant. It may not be enough, all right? It may be a hell of an understatement to describe who Roger and what Roger Stone is. And the fact that that guy had the influence that he did, or maybe does, or whatever, over the president. I mean, remember, his name comes up a number of times in the Mueller report over, his connections with WikiLeaks and the, the document dump that WikiLeaks was doing regarding the DNC server.
Right.
So, I mean, he was, he's having conversations on behalf of the president or on behalf of then, Trump, who was running for president. I mean, it just, again, and people with blinders on. They're like, oh, no, you're just being overly critical because you don't like Trump. I'm like, you don't think this is fucking weird? That this dude is doing a hot body t-shirt contest in strip clubs in Tennessee and wherever the fuck he's going? Like, that's just not, like, I'm the only one who finds that bizarre that that's how this guy is going to raise money. Right? Like,
you are not the only one.
And he's going to raise enough money to pay the type of attorneys that he has to defend him in this fucking case, doing a hot body, come on.
Oh, so when you initially said he's doing a hot body contest,
well,
I thought he was going to be like, because as an older guy, he's a weightlifter, he's whatever. I thought it was going to be like, hottest dudes over 60 or something.
No, why?
That's what popped into my head. I don't know. That's how the words swirled. Because he's like, he's got a tattoo of Nixon he's always showing off on his back. And all right, anyway. I'm not saying I find Roger Stone hot. I'm saying when you started that sentence, that's where I thought it was going to go.
Okay, fair enough.
But yes, it is bizarre.
Yeah, again, it's just the people, people talk about the Russia investigation. I don't want to dig into this because, I think we're going to have to get back into it soon enough.
Yeah, I agree.
But my contention has been, did Trump ever deliberately collude or conspire with the Russians? No. But the problem was the people he surrounded himself with had nefarious intentions.
Yes.
Right?
Roger Stone admits he plays dirty. He admits
Roger Stone, Paul Manafort, this Papadopoulos guy, the other, the guy who...
Michael Flynn.
Right, Michael Flynn. And then the guy who got this whole Carter Page.
Right.
All of these people, right, have their tentacles in, some muddy water across the pond. And, Trump didn't know any of this. He just happened... to find every, scumbag in and around Washington who had ties to Russia. It just, if he didn't, and the reality is he may not have, right? Which again shows you just how, kind of ridiculous this all was. Your contention that he never wanted to win, that this was about drawing publicity, this was about raising his salary on The Apprentice. This is about, getting his name out there for his hotels and casinos and building,
My contention was he wanted to have his own cable news network.
Right.
And this was his launching point for
that.
And
I don't think that's off, right? And that's definitely going to be on the table once he's out of the White House.
How weird would that be if he's a former president and he has a cable network?
All bets are off at this point.
I agree. But I didn't say how unlikely. I'm not saying it's unlikely at all. But how weird would it be? Can you imagine Bill Clinton or George Bush or Barack Obama say, "Welcome to the Obama Hour on the Obama Channel, where we're going to talk about
Obama." Right? Because Trump. Trump's going to talk about him.
And we'll be the Trump Channel. We know this much. We know.
Right.
It'll be called the Trump Channel,
but the Trump Network
or the Trump. My apologies, the Trump Network.
But. I think that can't be lost when you think about why he was doing this, right? Like he didn't get in it expecting to win. He didn't get in it planning to win. He got into it to use it as leverage. The thing with the NFL didn't work out. Because he essentially was looking to cash in on something that could potentially bring him, a huge chunk of money. Like, listen, owning an NFL team, if they're any good. Right, and even if they're not, you're gonna make money, right? Because the
Bills have gone up 10% in value over the last year, and they've not been good.
Right. I mean, the NFL is just a treasure trove, and you can talk about being a conservative, and you're still mad about Colin Kaepernick. Guess what? NFL doesn't care. The motherfuckers are still making money. They got TV deals out the ass. Viewership is up. The only thing that's down is people actually going to the games because there's just more ways to consume the games outside of actually going, and they're very expensive to go to. Right,
and plus at the end of the year in places like Buffalo, Cleveland, Green Bay, it's miserable to go to.
But the other thing too is that corporations are buying those tickets up and using them basically as,
giveaways, tax breaks, whatever,
and all that sort of stuff. So I mean, the NFL is the NFL, and it's going to be the NFL, right? I mean, so it's a big moneymaker, and Trump wanted in on that because he saw the value in it, and then he wasn't allowed in the club, so he had to figure out another way to kind of generate that sort of, to be able to generate that sort of cash. And it was to raise his profile for everything that he already has, right? And then all of a sudden, he says a couple ridiculous things about, Mexicans being, rapists and building a wall. And that was his campaign.
Yeah.
And they started to try to basically build it.
That was his campaign. It was also what got him fired by NBC, which basically made what was once an asset or a play into now, okay, what I had is gone. I need option B.
Right. Now the argument against this, people are like, well, he funded his own campaign. He's not making that money anymore.
Which I don't think is true about him funding his own campaign, but okay.
I mean, I don't it's not worth.
All right. I don't know, but I don't think.
I don't know. I don't see why.
He had no trouble raising money.
He had no trouble raising money, and I mean, listen.
And if you think he'd rather spend his dollars than yours,
right? Knowing people, that are very, very wealthy, they are very big on using other people's money as opposed to their own. That's how they get wealthy, and so on and so forth. So that even throwing that out there, I just think that when you look at all of this as a whole, right, and you just step back and you look at where he came from. How he got in the race, why he got in the race, the people he surrounded himself with, all this talk about, all right, let's see what actually went on here and investigating it should not seem that far-fetched. And I put together, I went back through the Mueller report, and I went back through some of basically, 2016 and back. And I put together this long thing, and I was going to publish it on our site, but it ended up being really long and really boring. Mm-hmm. And I read it, and it was a little too scholarly. But I mean, there's a legitimate argument as to that explains why he and his campaign were being investigated, right? I mean, and again, it starts with Carter Page, and you can say, well, the evidence was flimsy, blah, blah, blah. Listen, we've been saying for the longest time that prosecutors from the federal to the county level don't need much to go after someone.
Right.
Right? Like, I mean, if you have a problem with this, then you have a problem with our criminal justice system overall. Right? I mean, like, and people are talking, obstruction and you need a crime. Oh, no. Listen, we see people get hit with obstructing justice and resisting arrest when you're not arresting them for a fucking crime.
Right.
Right? I mean, so we see this all the time, and now people are saying, oh, well, you can't do that. No, this is how our criminal justice system works. So if you want to change it, then let's actually have a talk about reforming criminal justice. But since you don't want to actually have that conversation, and you're just throwing everything out there to protect Trump, who, you are willing to support blindly at all costs, then fine. Then we're going to do this deep dive into his campaign and some of the people he surrounded himself with and who they were talking to and what they knew and when they knew it and why, right? I mean, and people, you want to say, oh, well, Obama was spying on him. Well, we're going to tell you why he was spying on him or why the government
the FBI was looking into him. Why Obama was not spying on him.
Yes, why the FBI was looking into him. And you can get as pissed about it as you want and say, well, that's not fair, right? Life's not fair. Our criminal justice system isn't fair, and that's how it works.
And there was evidence of foreign entities fucking around with our election.
Exactly.
And they were using the Trump campaign. So, all right. So, speaking of Trump appointees, your buddy Ben Carson's back in the news. And I got to throw this.
Funny.
You know what? To me, you go ahead and run with it because you're more familiar with the details.
Familiar with it.
It's your life, big part of your life.
This really upset me. Like I didn't even think it was funny. It pissed me off.
Okay.
And the reason why, so Ben Carson is in front of Congress, and Katie Porter, I think she's I want to say out of Virginia, maybe, I'm not sure.
I don't remember.
She asked him if he knew what an REO, real estate owned property, was, but she said REO, and Carson goes, "What, O-REO?" And she said, "No, REO. Do you know what it means?" He's real estate organization? No, real estate owned. And real estate owned, and what that means, and chances are you've probably seen the clip by now, but if you haven't, a real estate owned property is what you call a property once it's been foreclosed on and it's now owned by the bank.
Right. And
why this is important and why it should matter to Ben Carson is because he's the secretary of HUD, all right? He's the secretary of the Department of
Housing and Urban Development.
Housing and Urban Development, right? And so one of the things that they look at is discrimination in housing, right? And some of the things that we're finding is that the foreclosure crisis and even foreclosures that are still happening now are disproportionately impacting minorities and specifically black people more than, outside of the norm than it should. So the question is why, right? And there's a number of reasons why. Is it nefarious? Not necessarily, but we have to look at why that's happening and figure out ways to resolve it. Some of it'll fix itself naturally, but we do want to. That's something you don't want people buying property and then losing it and having it owned by the bank, right? It causes. It has so many negative impacts on the market. We saw it in 2008, and then you just there's a ripple effect of what happens because banks don't necessarily want this to happen, right? Because once they take ownership of a property, now they own it, and so now they have to figure out what to do with it, right? And some of these banks, Bank of America, they had backlog thousands and thousands and thousands of properties. Even smaller banks like locally here, Huntington and KeyBank, they had thousands and thousands of properties and not knowing what the fuck to do with them. So Ben Carson is asked about it, right? Like, what have you found? What do you know about it, right? He doesn't even know what real estate owned properties are.
Right.
He doesn't even know what we're calling a property that goes into foreclosure as the Secretary of HUD, right? Like that should raise a red flag, right? Now, the other issue that I have here as well, though, is because, listen, I have to work directly with HUD, like, on a daily basis, right? Like, I was in a screaming match earlier today with someone from HUD because they completely overstepped their bounds, and there's a whole nother conversation. But, like, I work directly with these people, and I can tell you that agency, over the last couple of years, since Ben Carson has taken over, it already was not, it was already a
clusterfuck?
Yes. Right? I mean, to put it mildly.
My eloquent...
Right, and now it's just, it's almost FUBAR, and so,
Sorry, so...
Go ahead.
This bothers you because it affects you personally, and I totally understand that. The problem not the problem I have, the thing that I'm going to say that might sound a little bit hypocritical or weird is Ben Carson was never qualified for this job.
No.
We knew this from the word go. I'm going to make an assumption. I think Ben Carson was offered this job because, one, he's black, and so that's a face for Trump to throw out there to say, hey, we got a black guy doing this stuff, so it's not racist. And two, it was a chance to slash government funding to something that neither Trump nor Ben Carson give a fuck about. And so they're poor people, I won't say mostly black, but it certainly disproportionately impacts the black community. Ben Carson gives no fucks. Donald Trump gives no fucks. All they want to do is slash that budget and use it for stuff that they want, and he was the right vehicle for it. And the notion, not that either of us ever said or thought this, but the notion that he was going to say, I'm a former brain surgeon. I'm not qualified for this particular job, but I'm going to get in there and do it the best I can and learn what I need to learn on the job. I never thought that was going to happen. I knew exactly, or not knew, but I suspected exactly what has happened would, and that is they're going to start slashing budgets, and they're going to use him as the face of it, and he's frankly going to fly under the radar 99% of the time because there's some other catastrophe going on. Meanwhile, people are getting fucked.
Yeah, I mean, Now, fortunately, the affordable housing community, they've got a relatively strong lobby. And they've got some really bright people that are kind of at the forefront of the industry, who aren't going to let him off the hook. Now,
good,
now good, but I mean, they only have so much influence, right?
Right.
So, I mean, but they will continue to put the pressure on and reach out to people that they in Congress, in government, that they know are sympathetic. Because affordable housing is a legitimate issue across the country.
Sure.
Right. And especially in some of your hotbeds, like, the entire state of California,
right,
New York, Chicago, all your major cities, and even here locally in Cleveland, affordable housing is something that almost every locality needs, right? Whether it's rural, urban, suburbs, like people aren't making enough money to, pay rent, to pay $1,800 in rent and feed themselves and whatever. So is it the government's job to deal with that? Not necessarily. And there's ways that private and public partnerships can work together to solve the problem, but we can't solve it if HUD and if the Secretary of HUD doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about, and HUD is the thing that's getting in the way.
Well, and so he followed up by saying, "Are you saying O-REO, meaning the cookies?" And then after the fact, he did a post like, "I'm having some delicious snacks now," with a picture of Oreos, and he invited this congresswoman to join him for that, which to me says, there's two ways to take that. One, he's trying to be funny and trying to make light of a situation, or the other way to take it is, fuck you guys, this is how little I really care about you. I kind of took it the latter.
Well, you would.
I did. I mean, just because it showed a. I mean, maybe it was a mixture of those things, but part of it is, hey, I don't care is how I took that, and
I think it's less of I don't care. I think Ben Carson is. I mean, listen, the guy is a brain surgeon.
Right.
Cannot take that away from him. He's a guy who grew up in public housing, poor, out of Detroit, and, is now the Secretary of HUD.
Right.
Via a brain surgeon. And so I believe that while there's an agenda from the Trump administration to essentially gut HUD to a degree, I do believe that Ben Carson does want to at least understand and do the right thing. But he's the Secretary of HUD.
But to him is the right thing to help people in need, or to slash a government agency that he thinks is too fat?
I think it's a combination.
Okay.
And listen, there's plenty of fat to be cut off the bacon or, pork shoulder or whatever you want to call HUD, right? I mean, listen, I deal with the agency all the time. There is the redundancy and the just ridiculous, the bureaucracy is absurd. Okay, so there's ways that they can cut the budget for HUD, right, without displacing people, right? Because some of the policies that they're talking about are literally taking people out of homes, and then what the hell happens to them, right? Like if they can't, like if they're struggling with living in public housing, and you're saying you no longer qualify for public housing, where do they go?
There's not a lot of people living high on the hog, as they say, who are in public housing. These are people who are struggling to make ends meet. You know far better than me, and I know I'm right in your wheelhouse, but there's certain government programs that people who are typically right-wing people get really mad about people taking advantage of. I don't know of a lot of that complaint in public housing. There's not a lot of folks who are, living. Maybe people do complain about it, but to me, a society where people don't have a roof over their head is a real problem. And I've been to India, and I've seen what it's like when there are literally people who are sleeping. I mean, we still have people sleeping on the streets in this country. I'm not saying we don't, but
you don't want to force an influx of homelessness all of a sudden.
That doesn't help anything.
Right, and yeah, I mean, obviously I could go on for this for
a long time,
for a while, but that's what bothers me about Ben Carson is that he didn't, he hasn't taken that time to learn. Although I think this gesture, the O-REO, it may look in bad taste, and I think Ben Carson, even when he was running for president, kind of had that awkward sort of, hey, you guys think this is funny? All right, let's
I forget what he did, but he did.
He's not overly charismatic, I guess.
That's a fair statement.
But I think he tries to be.
Sometimes he looks barely conscious.
Right. I mean, he tries hard. I think he tries too hard to be charismatic when he's not. And so things come across very disingenuous. So here's the O-REO thing, and where I think he was trying to make light, and I think he wants to. I think he probably would want to sit down with her, have the conversation, at least understand where he screwed up, understand what she was trying to say, in the bigger picture. And then does he apply it to anything? Likely not, because it's just not in their current agenda and their plan. But I think he would at least like to know, just so that he doesn't look like an idiot going forward.
I mean, I certainly think that's the case. And let's face it, you're right. He's a brain surgeon. He's gone through classes that I would have never passed. I won't deny that.
Right.
Having said that, he has said some incredibly dumb things.
He has, and that's the other thing. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's
the pyramids were green storage silos. No, Ben, they were not. All right.
Slaves were basically immigrants.
Yeah. Right. Oh fuck! I forgot about that one.
Yeah.
All right. So let's just totally change gears here, because there was a really interesting story out of Morehouse College, right? Not university. Mm-hmm. Okay. A billionaire named Robert Smith gave the commencement address, and bless you. And
it's that time of year, man.
We don't have a sneeze button to block that. And so I don't know the details, but I think he basically said he was going to pay off the student debt of that graduating class.
Yep.
It's kind of cool.
What's the detail? Like, what else do you?
Well, I didn't know if there was.
I mean, he made the announcement.
I don't know if there was like stipulations to it. I don't know if it was like, if you do this, if you go.
Right. I don't know. Like that, I don't know. You're right. I don't know if he made certain stipulations, but it seems like he's gonna take care of the entire class, and it's an amazing feat. There's been a little bit of pushback and backlash, because Morehouse is a historically black college. So obviously, conservative white kids at like, this is racist, and if someone did that for us at Yale, then what would you do, or whatever,
right.
Or at University of Virginia.
Yale's the wrong choice, because those kids are already probably fabulously wealthy, or at least supported by it,
or fair number of them.
Yeah.
But I mean, and listen, it's an amazing thing. And this is the benefit of having wealthy people who look like you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, white people have had billionaires that choose to or not do with their money whatever they want.
Sure.
Right? And black people have too, but in much, much smaller numbers.
Sure.
And so this is the benefit. And in the black community and in black culture, there's a slow but emerging change of mindset on building wealth.
Yeah.
And there's a group of people that are realizing, like, okay, we can become wealthy without having to worry about becoming a professional athlete or becoming an actor or a rapper or a singer. There's other avenues to do it if we're willing to be disciplined and put the work in, right? And learning just some of the basic things that were never really in the black community, whether it's just saving your money and investing money and, having an LLC, having multiple LLCs, estate planning, and putting something in building slowly, right? Like buying small pieces of property and then using them to cash flow to be able to build bigger pieces of property. Just understanding how all that works, and other ways to create passive income, whether it's, putting an ebook out or having a monetized podcast or whatever it might be.
What's that like?
I don't fucking know. But I mean, just all the different avenues that are out there that you can bring additional income in and then use that to slowly build a small nest egg, and then which, depending on what you do,
in this case,
grow.
it's not a small nest egg.
Right. Well, but I mean, I think the whole point is that you're seeing a shift in mindset in a culture, in a group, in a demographic, and this, Robert Smith, by doing this, what he's done is he's really set up a small group of people. He's taken shackles off of them that, a lot of college students have to deal with.
Sure.
Right? 20, 30, 50, 100, $120,000 worth of debt as soon as they walk across that stage.
Yeah.
You get a diploma and it's just like, congratulations, hope you have a job, because in about 6 months, if you don't, then the government's going to start calling, and whatever private entity you got loans from, they're going to start calling and they're going to want their money. Right? Like, so, it's not like the cost of education is, like you put in the time and effort, but then there's also the financial cost, and the financial cost is 100 times more than what it was 20 years ago.
Oh,
right?
I mean, Steve, I'm a poster boy for that statement. I mean, I lived at my dad's place in college.
It's getting better, by the way.
Yeah, okay, the whiskey we're talking about. I paid in-state tuition at West Virginia University and didn't live in a dorm room. I graduated college essentially with no student loan debt, none. And at the time, it wasn't nearly as big a deal. In fact, it was hard to get a student loan back in those days. Mm-hmm. I didn't qualify because my dad made too much money, and we were far from wealthy, but we weren't poor.
Right.
And now they will throw money at anyone for anything. They're just going to charge you an interest rate and try to make money off of that debt.
Yep.
And I know so many kids who are, like $100,000 in debt coming out of college at 22, 23 years of age. They got a communications degree from Akron.
Right.
And it's like,
Good luck.
good luck with that. Yeah.
I mean, listen. I graduated with no student loan debt out of college, but I was on scholarship. Right. But law school is a whole different story. That is completely that I had to pay for. No help from the family. Had to take out student loans for pretty much everything. Tried to work as much as I could to offset it. But going to law school in Chicago, it doesn't matter which school you go to, you're going to pay through the nose because of Chicago. And I've always said, like, the biggest mistake that I made was going to Chicago. As much as I love the city and as great of an experience as I got, I'm hard-pressed to believe that I couldn't have got the same education and similar experiences in Cleveland.
Some of the experiences you told me about, I don't know if you could have reproduced.
True, but...
You would not have been playing beer pong with Kyle Orton in Cleveland, for example. And that's just one of them.
Right. That's true.
You would not have been jockeying around Chicago Bulls cars in illegal parking spots in Cleveland. Just saying. I'm not saying it's worth the debt, but it might be.
Maybe. Those are all good points.
Michael Jordan and Kyle Orton should have put together money to pay for your law school, and I'm calling that out right now. MJ and Kyle Orton,
Michael Jordan and Richard Dent.
Oh, that's right, Richard Dent
and Tank Johnson.
See,
and Cedric the Entertainer. And Brian Urlacher.
Go fund me for Steve. And Brian Urlacher, fuck's sake.
Luol Deng and them.
All right, I'm now standing by firmly my statement. You could not have duplicated that experience.
Okay, but in terms of education and in terms of,
Agreed.
In terms of education and legal experience, we'll say, I could have got that here in Cleveland at a quarter of the cost.
And you might not have worked for the public defender's office in Cleveland and had the same experience you did in Chicago. Well, it might be as bad, but it might not be.
It's set up completely different.
Right. And, so, I know how much that jaded you and told you that criminal law was not your thing.
Right. But all that being said, but that's my thing.
Right.
I'm directly tied to the student debt.
Sure, but you came out with a law degree. These kids are graduating undergrad with a communications degree are that much more fucked.
Right, but I'm still paying close to $1,000 a month.
I get it. Oh,
in student loan, right? I mean, that's a huge fucking chunk of money. And
that's my mortgage, Steve.
Right, and listen, I make good money, but at the same time, because a huge chunk of the money that I pay that I make is going to student loans, right? It directly impacts everything, right? Like, I mean, if you took my combined income and let's say you were going to buy a house, like if you took away my student loans, then I would qualify for.
You'd have your own dock on Rocky River, and
yes, then that is no bullshit.
I know it's not.
But because I carry this fucking student loan debt burden, which I made the choice to go to school.
Sure.
I made the choice to go at a time when it was, a sketchy time for people to go to law school because the economy was crashing and banks were going down. So that means law firms were going down because they're directly tied to each other. It was rough. Right as we were going in, things started to kind of collapse, and then by the time we got out, it was a train wreck. I mean, there were lawyers, there were partners in law firms who were committing suicide because things were so bad. So my timing wasn't great, right? And so to offset it, essentially, you needed to be making $200,000 a year to offset the cost of going to law school, right? And I'm not there, so it's a hefty burden that I'm dealing with a professional degree. And it's even more so for these kids, coming out of college with just whatever their Bachelor of Arts or Science or whatever is, and if you're not in an in-demand, high-demand field, which not every kid can be STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, right? Not every kid is going to be STEM, right? And every kid I talk to, I always tell them, go STEM, right?
But if you are STEM, there's no guarantees there's the money.
Right, but I mean, there's no guarantees, but you got a better chance.
Sure.
But not every kid is wired to do science, technology, and math. So what are those kids supposed to do? Not go to college? And maybe that's the answer. Maybe the answer is don't go to college. Figure out another way in
trade schools and
right. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because having this burden on your back of all this debt, isn't doing these kids any good.
Right. If you can get a job where you learn as an apprentice and you start off making nothing, but you learn something without accumulating debt, that might be better for a lot of kids.
But I just think what Robert Smith did was he allowed these kids to not have that burden. Right. So then they can go out and they can create without the pressure of knowing that they have to pay this back. It basically gives them a safety net to a degree, right? Because knowing that you don't have this burden of student loans, then you can go and you're more willing to maybe go do a startup, and you're more willing to go take a job that you wouldn't have normally taken.
Go to grad school,
right?
Take a job that doesn't pay as well.
Don't go to grad school, kids. Do not go. Well, no, I mean, I'm dead serious. Right. Don't do that, right? You're starting out ahead, right? Because it
depends what you do. Because I went to grad school I was a TA, so I was a teaching assistant. So I got my tuition waived. And I was a teaching assistant, which is a shitty job, and I was making a whopping $12,000 a year doing it. But to me, that felt like a ton of money at the time.
But I mean, I guess you can look at your options differently.
Right, absolutely.
You can be much more. You can be more aggressive, and that will help. Now, listen, I think Morehouse is relatively small, and I think the class is, I want to say, between 700 and 1,000 students.
Okay.
Right, but if you think about the grand scheme, the number of people that can impact, right? Because they're going to go off, and Morehouse is all male. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, because their sister school is Spelman.
Okay.
But so these guys will go off, and they get married, and now they're not bringing that burden into their relationship, right?
Sure.
So even when it comes to buying a house or all that sort of thing, it gives them more flexibility, allowing them to start the process of building wealth and creating a nest egg. So now you've got this pocket of roughly 1,000 guys who don't have this burden of student loan debt, and who, if they play their cards right, then can really kind of create, who can create a generational sort of nest egg for their families that would have been a lot harder with the cost of paying for more. Morehouse is not cheap. Okay. Right, it's a historically black college, but trust me, it is not cheap. It's right down there in Atlanta. They're very, very expensive schools to go to. The quality of the education is very good, but you pay for it, right?
Sure.
And so now these guys don't have that, and so they can go off, and that's the benefit of it, right? And that's why you want to create wealthy people, because they can give back, right? People get pissed because, taxing the rich. Well, if you had billionaires who did more shit like this, then all of a sudden maybe that idea of taxing the rich doesn't necessarily come out as much, because you can see a direct impact
of already wealthy people helping out people on their way up. So if the one thing about this that I think is bad, if you are like Warren Buffett or Oprah Winfrey or Bill Gates, you are going to be invited to so many commencement speeches in the next 2 years.
They already are.
I'm sure they are.
They already are.
The pressure's on, though. If you're Bill Gates and you go and don't help
Well,
people, I'm joking.
Well, and I guess
Bill Gates, a really cool thing this guy did, by the way. Robert Smith.
Bill Gates gives a shit ton of money, philanthropy, and so does Warren Buffett. And but I think part of it too is like Warren Buffett and Bill Gates. A lot of what they do is directly related to reducing taxable numbers, all that stuff, tax shelters, all that stuff, right? They play the tax game as well as anybody, but Bill Gates is just this kind of goofy-looking guy, and he says, "I want to fix the world and the environment, blah blah blah." But it's just like, listen, man, people are fucking hurting.
Sure,
right? So
I
at
think
some
Bill
point,
Gates gives away like $1 million a day or a week, or
right?
something.
But I mean, like if you look at where the money is going, it's just like so you give it to some organization that's studying. Carbon dioxide let off by frogs. Okay, man, just listen. Got a bunch of fucking poor kids over here. Can you put these kids through school? Can you build this fucking family a house? Right? Can you get this dude a car? Like, you know what I mean? Like, in mass. Like, I mean, at some point in time, all that other shit is important. Sure. Right? But at some point in time, just go to the fucking hood and buy a block, redo it, and say everybody who lived on this block, you get a new fucking house. Right? That's the sort of things. Like, and like, am I telling you what to do with your money? Yes. All right, because you studying the fucking environment is not doing me any fucking good.
Well, I disagree with the environmental shit, but
plenty of shit doing it. Like, listen, he got enough money, he can do both. He's got enough money, he can do both.
I agree.
All right, like so. I mean, take $1 million a day and go into a shitty neighborhood and help that shitty neighborhood. Right? You don't even need $1 million. You know what you could really do? You could take about $150,000. You come right here. I'll give you access to my student loan account and you just wipe that bitch clean.
And the truth comes out. All right, so speaking of money, Harriet Tubman was going to end up on the $20 bill in the relative near future.
Everything around me. Cream, get the money. Dollar bills, y'all.
Okay.
Who is it?
I have no fucking clue.
Wu-Tang Clan.
Okay. With my boy
RZA. Don't forget his buddy GZA.
All right.
Now you don't know if I'm fucking with you or not.
I know you're not, because I know RZA. Okay. You know what? I'm not letting you play this game. Fuck you. No, you don't get away with this. So Harriet Tubman was going to end up on the $20 bill, and she still probably will. However, it's been delayed until 2027?
28.
Okay.
Okay, first of all right.
This could be, all right, Steve, baby.
Get the fuck out of here.
I'm going to pour some whiskey and let Steve handle this.
So what they did, like Harriet Tubman was supposed to go on the $20 bill in 2020, and we were supposed to see like an unveiling, what it's going to look like, and Trump administration was just like, we're not doing that. We're not putting a black person, we're not putting a black woman, we're not putting her on the 20. If somebody wants to do it, they can do it down the road. We'll punt it to 2028 when we're way out of the White House, and that puts us out of the White House, and potentially Pence. Let's say Pence were to run, and let's say Trump wins in 2020. So 24, right? Like, so it punts it all the way down to like the end of a potential, Pence president or
Pence
whoever,
re-election campaign,
whatever it might be, right? Like so that's why they did it. So
couple things though. Trump. When
do you honestly think it'll like? I mean, if they punt it to 2028, who's going to remember? Who's going to actually follow through with it? You have so many changes by then. I don't see it happening. They killed it.
There's a few things to me though that need to be said. Is when it was announced that Harriet Tubman was going to be on the $20 bill, Trump called it pure political correctness and said, if you want to put her on anything, put her on the $2 bill. Mm-hmm. That's really dismissive and disrespectful. Now,
he could. I mean, he might as well just said put her on the $3 bill.
Right. Because when's the last time you saw a $2 bill?
Literally just like 2 days ago.
Really?
Yeah.
I haven't seen one in 10 years.
Yeah.
How the fuck? All right, perfect timing for me. We recorded a couple of days earlier. My question would have worked much better.
It still does
My
work.
point's legitimate.
They're very rare. I think they're still actually in circulation and production or whatever. They just don't make nearly as many of them, but you can definitely still get a $2 bill. Is that the appropriate place for Harriet Tubman? I mean, if you're going to make the change, make the change. I mean, I would make an argument that maybe would I flip her for Andrew Jackson? I would argue maybe flipping her for Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin's not a president,
right?
She's not a president, right? Like as much Andrew Jackson, maybe it was a dick, but he still was a president. So I mean, I just like maybe swapping her out with someone who wasn't a president, which is Ben Franklin, which puts her on, what, the $100 bill? Is that where Ben Franklin is?
All About the Benjamins, yes.
Yes. So
Look at that. Rap reference.
Okay.
I'm just giving myself.
Who's the artist?
Who's All About the Benjamins is... It'll come to me, and I'll stall long enough. I'll stall till 20... I'll answer you in 2028.
Okay. No, you won't. Like, you're not going to answer me in 8 minutes or in 2028.
Or when I Google it in 2 minutes when you're not looking. The fact is, Andrew Jackson was historically being driven off of the 20 for two reasons. He was a slave owner, and what he did during the Native American Trail of Tears. I mean, pretty ugly stuff. Right. I mean,
that and the whole thing with his black children that he.
Oh, I don't know that.
You didn't know
he knocked up a couple slaves.
Knocked up a couple slaves, and he's got which is weird because he wasn't a fan, but apparently he was a fan.
You can be a fan and not be a fan,
right? So there's that.
Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, this is clear, like you said, it's a punt, which is really a not. Let's face it, not in Donald Trump's lifetime. And hopefully still in mine. Being very fatalistic lately. But one thing I've got going for me is I am not Michael Avenatti.
My man.
You're man. This guy's awesome. He's going to be my favorite. He's going to be my favorite convicted felon ever. Knocking Paul Manafort off. Paul Manafort's ostrich jeans.
I don't know if anyone could beat Paul Manafort.
I think this guy is giving it a run because Paul Manafort, for all of his flaws and all of his scumminess, Michael Avenatti is going to go to prison for a good long time. He, at one point, said he was going to run for president based on being the representative of Stormy Daniels, who he also ripped off.
Right.
This guy's, what a dirtbag.
He stole $300,000 from him.
Yeah.
To pay for his Ferrari lease.
What a fucking dirtbag.
And then,
extorting Nike.
Well, that's why you fucked up.
Right.
Because
you extorted someone with way bigger pockets
Nike
than you
was
ever.
like, who the fuck are you? You know what? We don't even need to deal with you. We'll call the FBI. Oh, well, you're going to get exposed. Don't care.
We've been exploiting child labor for 100 years. We give no fucks. We make
$100 million a day. Fuck off. At one point in time, he's just like, oh, I'll hurt your... It was paraphrasing, basically he was going to say he was going to take their market share down 10% because he was going to expose everything that they do. And they were just like, you know what? Here's the FBI. And you can air all the dirty laundry you want. We'll still be the largest sports apparel company in the world by a lot.
I've been boycotting Nike since the mid-'80s because of their labor practices and whatever.
Fine, you stand up. No, I mean it's a stand up thing.
Oh,
okay.
I'm not. I thought you were saying
but I mean it's. I mean you and there's a ton of remember all of Breitbart is boycotting Nike because of Colin Kaepernick, right? And Nike's still the number one retailer in the world by billions and billions of dollars. They had no impact on Nike's share. Nike made money because of those idiots. They're still making money hand over fist. Nike they're probably even bigger than the NFL. They are bigger than the NFL because of their...
In terms of total dollar value, I wonder. I wouldn't think so. Whole NFL? That's a lot. We're talking hundreds of billions versus hundreds of billions, though. So
that's a good question. Actually,
I would think not. Just because the NFL...
Nike's all over the world.
That's true.
They got it on lock here. They got it on lock in Europe. They got it on lock in Asia. Asia alone is just,
Yeah.
So,
we could look it up, but it would take time, and we're not going to do that. But
who's worth more, the NFL or Nike?
Right. Well, we just type in total net worth of Nike.
And NFL is tricky because it's a league and it's basically a cartel.
It's a monopoly, yeah. Basically, it absolutely is. But yeah, so Michael Avenatti, just when you thought this guy couldn't be any scummier, you find out...
The fact that he stole from Stormy Daniels, that hits me...
Maybe that's why Stormy's not returning our DMs.
Stormy's not coming back to Ohio.
Yeah, probably not.
Last time she was here, she got arrested.
Things didn't go great.
Which I still think, that was pretty shitty.
Oh,
shady, and someone should probably get
clearly politically motivated, and we got criticized for saying that, but
someone should probably
face consequences for that. Yes. even if it's just professional consequences, like, hey, you arranged a stripper getting arrested in a sting when we had way bigger fish to fry.
Right.
But
just a waste of government resources.
Speaking of scummy, weird white guys, we got Julian Assange.
Oh, God. He looks like he smells so bad. Every picture I see of him,
there is really no way to argue with that statement. He does look like he stinks, and I'm sure he does. And I'm sure he was a horrible house guest.
He was.
But now he's facing criminal charges regarding the Espionage Act, which he was previously accused of sexual assault and some other stuff, and there was a lot of people saying that was trumped up.
I mean, I think that's still happening, but the U.S.
I think it is, although there's lots of people saying those are bullshit charges. I don't know if they are or not.
I don't give a fuck about those. I mean, I don't because I mean, you're right. They probably are trumped up, and I don't. That's not what gets me. Like with him, like a lot of people are saying, "Oh, you're doing this, Julian Assange, slippery slope." Bullshit. I'm sorry, it's bullshit. If he did listen, it's one thing if Chelsea Manning or what was his name before? Whatever.
Was it Daniel?
Daniel Manning, whatever.
Okay.
All right, but Daniel Manning at the time, Chelsea Manning now. If Daniel Manning just said, "Look, I got all this info on the U.S. I took it out of the computer," and he handed him a jump drive, or he handed him a file folder,
right,
or whatever, then I would say Julian Assange didn't do anything wrong. What's he supposed to do? Say no? And First Amendment, free speech, go publish it. I mean, kind of a dick move, but it's different in that instance. What they're saying happened, and if you don't think that this version happened or something like this didn't happen, then I question it, because what they're saying is Manning said that he wanted to expose the U.S. government, which
I'm cool with, by the way.
Okay, fine. Went to Julian Assange and said, "I want to do this, but I don't know how." Julian Assange says, "This is how you do it. This is how you break into, you break this code, you do this, and here's the things that you use. And once you do that, I can do this, and then we have the information, and then I'll publish it." And that right there, and that's the difference, right? That's the difference. And to me, it's not that hard. It's not gray. It's not slippery. He conspired with someone to steal information, right? And then he took that information that he conspired to steal, and then he plastered it all over the interwebs.
Yep.
All right. So
now,
I
think he did some valuable things. I know we disagree on this
okay,
wholeheartedly.
fine, but it's still a crime. It's still a crime, right? Then it's like okay,
if
fine.
If it is,
that's fine. You can do valuable things. I did it in the name of justice. Well, you still broke the law, right?
Okay.
I mean, he still conspired to steal top secret government information, right? I mean, it's like, think of it this way. Your house, right? I have a key to your house.
Yes, you
right?
do.
Someone comes to me and they say, "I want to take something from Jim's house." I say, "Oh, okay. Well, I have a key. Why don't you take this key?" Even though Jim doesn't want you in his house, Jim doesn't like let's say a scorned ex-girlfriend.
Okay.
Right, and I give the
there's a list of those.
Right, I give the scorned ex-girlfriend the key, or I give her the code to your alarm. Then am I not a part of?
Yeah.
Am I not a part of the problem there?
Conspiracy to commit a crime. I agree.
Right. So what the fuck is the difference here? Right, and that's the thing. He needs to be held accountable. You want to praise him about what he exposed and blah blah blah. Okay, fine, whatever. Put him on a fucking mantle. This is your God, right? This is your leader.
I never said
this
those
is your
things.
king.
I never said those things, and I didn't.
Black Panther reference.
Okay.
But it's right before Killmonger threw Black Panther over the fucking cliff. But it's fucking Julian Assange. Dude is a scumbag, right? Maybe he didn't do the things in Sweden that they accuse him of, but just fucking look at him, right?
Just fucking look at him is not illegal. Come on. He's a gross white guy who puts smeared cat shit is not and I think that
I think you overestimate what happens in courtrooms sometimes. But I think, listen, you want to praise them for the information that they exposed. Okay, that's fine. But there's still a price to pay for how the information was obtained.
Sure.
Sorry. You can't just say, well, it's free speech, and then if anybody wants to hack into the government or help an employee hack into the government, they can in the name of free speech, because then all of a sudden every news organization in the world is going to start hiring hackers and saying, how the fuck do we get in? Let's go find someone who's willing to go get the information and give them the keys that they need to break in. Come on now.
Okay. I mean, look, if he's legitimately committed acts of espionage, that's against the law, and maybe I'll be calling for President Tulsi Gabbard to pardon him in 4 years or whatever. But yeah, he's facing some serious legal shit, and he holed up.
Rightfully so. And if things alleged are true,
I have no problem with him being charged as long as he's given legitimate chance at justice, at a chance to defend himself. Now, we were criticizing the criminal justice system earlier. I will continue to do that, as will you. So who knows if that's a real possibility, especially if it goes to trial, because getting a fair trial for this guy is going to be a circus. But we will see. We got...
Oh, the tangled web.
Yeah.
I just don't. I don't like him.
I know.
I don't.
You're clear. You've been very clear. And as an individual, I'm not standing up for him. As a whistleblower, I am.
He's not a whistleblower. He's not.
I disagree.
He's not. Manning is the whistleblower.
Okay.
Manning is the whistleblower.
He was the instrument of a whistleblower who exposed people to things that they didn't want to see, that the government didn't want them to see, and I wish we all saw more of. Because I think it would change the way people...
Congratulations.
Yeah,
but either way.
Whatever. That's where... We've had this fight like 10 times now.
Listen, this is the way I see it. If you want... all right, Chelsea Manning sees something wrong, wants to blow the whistle, fine. You got to do it on your own. Do it on your own, stand on your own 2 feet and say, I did it because this is what was right. Which she's done. To her credit, she's done and said, listen, I'm not going to throw Assange under the bus. I will go and you want to hold me in contempt, which they've thrown her in jail multiple times, right? Even after Obama, I don't know if he pardoned her.
He did pardon her, but she spent 7 years in prison or something.
Right, and I'm fine with him pardoning her. I'm fine with her standing up and being a whistleblower. Julian Assange is the person that I have an issue with, right? Like if she can get that on her own and get it out and get it into the stratosphere, right? Or get it to the media, okay. I'm okay. Good. Right? Like then you need those sort of people and that's how we get change. But what Julian Assange did, like that dude, he's the fucking slippery slope. If you go to bat for this guy and you defend him and he wins, then all of a sudden, then the whole thing about rule of law goes to shit, right? But not in a way that the people who want this to happen would want it to actually happen. Right, like it's so ass backwards right now. The people that are rooting for Julian Assange is just like, you fucking morons. Like, no, that is not what you want to go down. Right? Chelsea Manning is your whistleblower. She wants to do it fine. And I also don't have a problem with her being pardoned. But him fucking orchestrating and getting his fucking grubby cat shit hands in there, that's the one I have a problem with.
You've made that clear. We can talk about this more, but let's move on.
People do know he smeared cat shit all over the embassy walls.
Allegedly.
Not allegedly. There were fucking pictures of it. It's disgusting.
You don't know who put that cat. Did you see him put...
Okay.
Smearing cat shit is a... It's gross. I'm not saying... Look.
I also hate cats, right? Okay. So I got a lot of issues here.
Oh, you got a lot of issues already. All right. One more thing I want to talk about is... And this is... All right, so... I would say, a disproportionate number of relatively close gay friends. Yeah. Right? I mean, and that's not, I just do. So I'm not looking for a pat on the back or whatever. But the show Arthur, which is a cartoon on PBS.
Which produces some hilarious memes, by the way.
Okay. Is producing or has produced and is airing an episode that features a same-sex marriage. And that episode is being blocked in the state of Alabama. Now, I have a few thoughts on this. First of which is...
Not a surprise.
Well, okay, and I do. Like I said...
No. Oh. Not a surprise. Well,
not a surprise that Alabama blocked it, or that I have an opinion.
Yeah, not a surprise that Alabama was blocking it.
Well, to me, it's... So, is that not the textbook definition of state censorship?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, first of all, this comes to me as, if you don't want your kids to see it, turn off the fucking TV. I mean, you know what's coming. And even if you don't, the idea that a state would block something that they find religiously offensive, or that the people who have the ability to do that find religiously offensive, bothers
morally.
Morally offensive.
And that's the argument that they're going to make. It's morally offensive. It's not religion. You have a separation of church because this is a moral issue, not necessarily a religious issue.
Well, okay, I'll call bullshit on that though.
I get
You're not
it,
going to fight me on that, right?
No, I'm not. But that's going to be a pushback, and semantics matter. And I agree with you. You don't want your kid to watch it, then just don't let the kid watch it, right?
So let me say what I think you might be about to say. I do understand people who are saying, I don't really want to have this discussion with my 6-year-old. Mm-hmm. And that's fine, again, which I go back to, don't watch that episode. Tell your 6-year-old.
But part of it too, I mean, it's an even broader conversation because it really goes to, it's hard to control what kids watch. I have a 4-year-old.
Right.
And she knows how to use an iPad or an iPhone, and she even understands how to use the TV. And there have been times where I've been busy and I'm like, go watch TV, or here's an iPad, right? And so they get access to this sort of stuff. But that's also the other thing. It's also Alabama. Alabama ranks like in the bottom of the country in terms of education. So maybe their kids can't figure out an iPad. But, the issue is, from a parent standpoint, you're on the one hand, you're saying, if you don't want your kids to watch it, don't let them watch it. But you may not know if and when your kid is going to have an opportunity to watch it. But at the same time, it's just like this isn't a state matter, right? Like, and I don't like it. I mean, because this sounds like the shit that they do in China, right? It's just like, oh, we don't want you seeing, or North Korea, or Russia, or one of these. Oh, we don't want you seeing things, that might,
or anywhere in the Middle East that's Muslim,
right?
Muslim governments.
It's a bad look. I mean, listen, you've got gay people in Alabama. I know you think you don't, but you do, right? And
Truman Capote wasn't gay,
right? They do, like they work in your government, they work in your private entity. They have a lot of money. They're poor. They're black. They got teeth. They don't have teeth, right? Like, I mean, you've got gay people all around you, whether you like it or not. Statistically, it just is what it is, right? And fighting it this way. This is nothing more than you just saying, we don't like gays, we don't like you, and we're going to fight you and everything about you every which way that we can, right? And it's just humans being humans, which is shitty, right? Like, typically we've proven to be shitty, and this is them being a prime example of shitty humans.
Yeah, I agree. And to me, if you do not ever dare tell me that's cool and tell me you're a First Amendment person. Because sometimes the First Amendment gets thrown around improperly.
The real question is who...
I don't... First of all, how does a state stop PBS from putting something out there? Because PBS is a weird thing to me. I've always disliked PBS because it was always on at my house and it was boring as shit when I was a kid.
Home of Sesame Street? Home of Reading Rainbow?
Well, okay, I watched those
things.
Are
you, a Nazi?
No, I like those things. Actually, I'm thinking of... It was more NPR than PBS that bothered me. But I hated NPR, and it's the same crowd. You call me a Nazi, you fuck. Anyway,
David's just way done.
The concept of a state stepping in and saying, inside our artificially created borders, these airwaves will not go through because we don't approve of what you're putting out there, and we don't want our kids seeing things that we don't want to think about or talk about. That's censorship, and it just shows how backwards some thinking can be. Again, you don't want to watch it, don't watch it. The idea
is still fighting segregation. I mean, come on.
Well, I mean, I was talking to
or desegregation.
And I was talking to some friends the other day who are gay, and like when we were talking about the Alabama abortion law, gay sex is still illegal in Alabama. Like two people
in a few states.
Which I'm straight, cool, good for me. I know a lot of gay people. Yay, good for me, whatever. I call many of them friends. I know a few people who are gay and they're complete assholes. I mean, I'm not glorifying sexual orientation one way or the other. I'm simply saying that to block the transmission of something because you can't handle the idea of it being on your kid's TV is really fucked up and feels a whole lot to me like something that would happen in Russia or Saudi Arabia or China, and that bothers me. And if you believe in the American system, or at least the perceived American system of freedom of speech and freedom of expression, then that's bullshit.
I second that motion.
All right.
I mean, I don't have as many gay friends
Right,
as
which
you
is not
or
like,
whatever.
no,
I'm just saying. I mean,
for whatever reason, I have.
right. I mean, I listen, I want everybody to be happy. I don't want anybody to be hurt. I don't think anybody should be attacked for who they are, right?
Right.
And what they are naturally.
Right.
Right? Whether you're black, white, male, female, gay, straight, everything in between.
Right.
You know, the gender, transgender thing, it took me a while to kind of figure that out, right? And, you know, and I came to understand that there's a difference between biology and gender, right?
Sure.
Like you've got
Sex
two
and
sexes,
gender.
right? Sex and gender are two different things, right? And gender gets fluid and different,
Yep.
and you can have multiple genders, and you know, I don't know how many genders there are. You know, I mean, there've been
It's
plenty
complicated.
of it is,
and
it
we're
is
still
complicated.
we're evolving as a society.
Right, and so
dealing with it.
ultimately, whatever you are, I don't give a shit.
Yeah,
right.
do
I'm gonna
you?
treat you the same. You're a good person. I'll treat you like a good person. Right. If you're a shitty person, I'm gonna treat you like a shitty person, and I'm also gonna treat you how I'm gonna treat you.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm not gonna like I'm kind of a dick, so I might be a dick to you, and it's not because that you're
It's not
gay,
you.
straight, or anything
It's
else.
not you, it's me.
Right. It literally is. Right. Like I mean, I'm gonna bust your chops a little bit. I'm gonna. But I'm also the same I'm the same person who will give most damn near anybody the shirt off my back.
If you see someone being treated unjustly, regardless of whether they are like you will speak up for them.
Right.
And I've seen you do it. So,
you know, so I just whatever, you know, Alabama doesn't have the best track record with anything other than college football.
which they're, to their credit, very good
right?
at.
Like other than college football, Alabama doesn't have a track record for much of anything, and so this is pretty much par for the course for them.
So what we really need is Nick Saban to become the governor of Alabama. All right.
Which
by the way, he would win in a heartbeat.
Oh my God, landslide. He could probably be governor and still be the head football coach of
He'd probably
Alabama.
only be governor if he was still the head football coach of Alabama.
Right, and he'd probably do a pretty decent job. You know, I mean, that dude. Like, have you ever watched a documentary on Nick Saban?
No.
He's a machine. Listen, like him, hate him, whatever. You know, I was recruited by him. I've talked to him. The man.
Was he at Michigan State?
Yeah, he was at Michigan State still. He used to wear green pants, and he had an emerald green Cadillac. It was fucking hilarious.
He's all in.
he was all in. But you know, dude's a machine. There's one last topic.
Yes, sir.
I know we're running long.
We're good though.
And this is where I have to bend the knee to you.
Oh no, this is gonna be great. I love this.
I have to bend the knee to you. We talked about Game of Thrones. We if you listen to the show, you know we both watch. You know, you had said towards the end of season 7 and the early parts of season 8, this looks like it's going off the rails. This looks like this isn't going to be great. You had your complaints and your gripes, and I just told you to just try to be a fan. Just enjoy it, right?
Right.
Just relax. Yeah, God damn it, you were right. It never, like,
You know this is being recorded, right?
I do.
I
So,
respect you for saying this. Go
here's
on.
the deal. Like, I was okay with the show through the battle at Winterfell. You had your issues because of the wolf. I mean, okay.
And a few other things.
And a few other things. Like, the big issue was you couldn't fucking see it, right? Like, I mean, I have a fucking, you know, whatever.
Also true.
But like that was like I thought that was good, and it was intense. It had drama. It caused it like whether you fancy yourself a wannabe movie critic or not, you can't say that you didn't react to that episode.
Agreed.
Okay. After that, it just went to shit. And I mean, there are so many loose ends, so many things that don't make sense. Why the fuck did they tell us that Jon Snow was a Targaryen? Like, and if you haven't seen it, it ended so bad, I don't even give a shit if you saw it or not. If you're still waiting to watch it, don't. It's terrible. But, like, why did they even tell us that Jon Snow was a Targaryen? Like, if you're just going to banish him off to the woods, like, what the fuck was the point? What was the fuck of the point of building Arya into this face-changing assassin if in the end she just
becomes Dora the Explorer with a sword?
Right, like with a little sword. Dora the Explorer
Boom.
with a sword. I mean, it's just like, why? Okay, if the Unsullied were leaving to go to Bath or Bale or wherever the fuck they were going, why did Jon Snow actually have to leave, right? If they were leaving anyway, couldn't you have just held him in a cell a little bit longer, let them go, and then he let him out, right? Like, I mean, also...
they tried to wrap everything up in a Hollywood...
But no, they didn't. They didn't even
tried
try
to.
No. I mean, there's so much stuff that they... I mean, I feel like there's so many loose ends, like, looking at, like, not just this season, but looking at over the course of the show, so many things that they left, like, just out there that, I feel like they didn't try to wrap it. It's almost like they're just like...
It felt like they were... In sports, they call it running for the bus, right? When you know it's over, you're up or down. Typically, when you're down big, you're not going to win. It's like, all right, let's just run out the clock, get this over with,
right, and get out
move on, cash our check,
right,
on to the next thing.
Yeah, it was, oh god, like, I mean, what the fuck was the point of Cersei being pregnant, right? Like, it didn't fucking matter, right? And okay, she's pregnant and she's just crushing wine, by the way.
Well, I don't know that was a big deal in those days.
What? I mean, we don't even know when this was. I mean, we're talking about dragons. Like, I don't know if that's the future, if it's the past, whatever. But I mean, not that
she's crushing wine.
All I'm saying is that they're implying that she's pregnant and she is pumping wine down her throat this entire time while she's watching the city burn. Now, mind you,
she also fucked her brother for a decade, so.
Right.
Okay, so we can go there.
Okay.
So let's not go with good prenatal care in Game of Thrones. If I was overthinking it now, what are you doing?
Well, what's funny is that a friend of mine is a doctor, and they text me and said, Jaime Lannister probably had a laceration to the liver and like all these injuries from the fight that he got in with what's his name? The Jaime Lannister. You remember Jaime Lannister gets into the fight with the guy down in the dude. I can't think of his name.
The Hound? No, who did you fight with?
The dude with the boats.
Oh yeah. I forget his name too. The Ironborn guy. Yeah.
So he gets in that fight, but my friend sends me all the injuries that Jaime Lannister would have had, and he's just like, "There's no way he would have made it that far." Right,
okay,
and been able, right? I'm just like, okay.
Right,
I'm like, all right. Listen, you're probably right, but of all the things that I've got issues with right now, I don't give a fuck about whether he would have made it with a laceration to the liver. And you don't know if he had a laceration to the liver. I mean, come on, it's not like you had imaging.
Jaime Lannister's MRI came back negative. It was good news.
Right. You might need a CT scan to see that.
All right,
Either way.
We have to stop.
But you see what I mean?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
We must
All
stop.
I'm saying is that
I'm watching our viewership go down like the tractor beam and
I think the best part of that show finale is when Daenerys is walking out to talk to the troops and the dragon opens the wings
behind her,
and I'm like, all right, that's
really kind of cool.
That is pretty badass.
Yeah. Let me tell you, the devil, right? She's got.
You're right, and there's so much symbolism there that you could really dig into, and I think that was great cinematography, and to the point where that's something where if I could take that picture, that's something I would consider getting tattooed somewhere on my body. That's how good it was, right? Like, you imagine putting that right center mass on the chest. Not you.
I could do it too, bitch.
Okay.
Anyway, you know what? I am done with you now.
Are you done with me?
I'm done with you. For once, I'm pulling the plug on you.
This is Jim punting on Steve. All right,
which doesn't happen often. We are at Steve and Jim. We are at Whiskey Congress. We used to be. Never mind. Whoa. We are at Whiskey Congress on all social media. We're Jim at whiskeycongress.com and Steve at whiskeycongress.com and email. Sorry we went rambling on, drinking whiskey and talking about Game of Thrones, but if you're still listening, you probably actually liked it. We are done. Thank you.
Ooh.